The first line of the letter made my hands start shaking. It read, "Daniel, if you're reading this, I've run out of time." The problem was that the woman who wrote it had disappeared 6 years earlier after taking $87,000 from our joint account. And until that moment, I thought I'd never hear from her again. But before we start today's story, please subscribe to the channel and like this video. My name is Daniel Brooks and I'm 35 years old. For a few seconds I just stared at the letter. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it. 6 years. For 6 years Rachel Bennett had been nothing more than a painful memory, a name I avoided, a chapter of my life I had fought to close. And now I was holding a letter written in her unmistakable handwriting. The stranger who had delivered it was already gone. I looked through the front window, but his truck had disappeared down the street. I was alone. Alone with the one thing I had wanted for years and feared at the same time: answers. Slowly, I sat down at my kitchen table and continued reading. By now, you've probably spent years hating me. I don't blame you. If our positions were reversed, I'd hate me too. My jaw tightened. At least she got that part right. I kept reading. I know what everyone thinks. That I stole the money and ran away. That I stopped loving you. That everything we had was fake. I paused. Because those weren't just things everyone thought. They were things I believed. Things I had spent 6 years believing. Then came the next sentence. "And if I never get the chance to explain myself, you'll die believing a lie." I felt a chill run through my body.
What lie?
Rachel's wasn't making any sense. I continued reading. "I can't tell you everything in this letter. There are things you need to see for yourself. But before you decide whether to burn this letter or keep reading, there's something you deserve to know." I leaned closer. My eyes moved to the next line. "I never stopped loving you." I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was ridiculous. The woman who had disappeared 3 days before our wedding wanted me to believe she'd loved me the entire time? After stealing our money? After leaving me to explain her disappearance to both families? After humiliating me in front of everyone I knew? No, I wasn't buying it. But despite my anger, I kept reading. Because now I needed to know where this was going. The letter continued. "Everything started 4 months before our wedding." I frowned. 4 months before? As far as I knew, nothing unusual had happened 4 months before our wedding. Rachel and I had been together for almost 5 years. We had a small apartment, stable jobs, a wedding planned, a future. Nothing about those months seemed unusual. Then I remembered something very faintly. Rachel had changed around that time. Not dramatically, just little things. She became distracted, tired, lost in thought. Whenever I asked if something was wrong, she always smiled and said she was fine. At the time, I believed her. The letter continued. "Do you remember the night I told you I had to stay late at work because one of the students was having a crisis?" I did. I remembered it clearly. Rachel worked as a school counselor. Late nights weren't unusual. I lied. I sat up straighter. That got my attention. I wasn't at work that night. My pulse quickened. Then where had she been? I read faster. I received a phone call from someone I hadn't heard from in years. I frowned. Rachel wasn't close to much of her family. In fact, she barely talked about them. Whenever the topic came up, she'd change the subject. I had always assumed she simply had a difficult childhood. Nothing more. But now I wasn't so sure. The next paragraph made my stomach tighten. The caller told me something I never expected to hear. He said my father was alive. I blinked.
Alive?
Rachel had told me her father died when she was a teenager. At least that's what she'd always believed. I read the sentence again, then again. My confusion grew. The letter explained that her mother had lied to her for years. According to the caller, Rachel's father hadn't died. He had disappeared, and now someone wanted Rachel to meet him. The story sounded insane, like something from a movie, yet I couldn't stop reading. Rachel wrote that she almost ignored the call, but curiosity got the better of her. A week later, she agreed to meet the man who claimed to know her father. The meeting took place in a small diner nearly an hour outside the city, and according to Rachel, that meeting changed everything. I turned the page. My hands were sweating now, because the letter was pulling me deeper into a mystery I never knew existed. The next section began with a sentence that instantly made my stomach drop. "The man at the diner wasn't there to help me find my father." I stared at the words. Then I kept reading. "He was there to warn me." Warn her? About what? I continued. According to Rachel, the stranger told her that her father had been involved in something dangerous decades earlier. Something he had tried to leave behind. Something that had eventually forced him to disappear. The stranger claimed certain people had recently started looking for Rachel. Not because of anything she had done, because of who her father was. I shook my head. None of this sounded real. It sounded crazy. Yet the details felt strangely specific, too specific to be invented. Rachel explained that she didn't believe the stranger at first either. until he showed her photographs, old photographs, photos of her father, photos that should not have existed, photos proving he had been alive long after the date Rachel believed he had died. I felt myself leaning closer to the letter. I needed to know more. But the next line stopped me cold. At first, I thought the stranger was lying. Then he showed me a photograph of you, a photograph of me. My chest tightened. Why would he have a picture of me? I kept reading. He told me that if I didn't cooperate, you would become part of this. Suddenly, the room felt smokier. The stranger had threatened me. Rachel wrote that she immediately left the diner. But the photographs continued arriving, letters, messages, warnings, every few weeks, always reminding her that they knew where we lived. They knew where I worked. They knew everything. I could barely believe what I was reading. Yet a memory surfaced. About 2 months before the wedding, Rachel had become obsessed with locking doors, checking windows, looking over her shoulder. At the time, I thought she was stressed. Now I wasn't so sure. Then came the sentence that made my blood run cold. The week before our wedding, they gave me a choice. I swallowed hard. The letter continued. Leave with the money and disappear, or stay and watch you'll suffer for something he knows nothing about. I froze. My eyes locked on those words. For several seconds, I couldn't move, couldn't think, couldn't breathe. Was she seriously claiming she stole the money to protect me? No, it couldn't be that simple. There had to be more, much more. And then I reached the final page, the final paragraph, the paragraph that changed everything. There's one thing I never told you about the money. My pulse raced. I read the next sentence. Then everything inside me seemed to stop. Because Rachel wrote, Daniel, I didn't take all $87,000. I stared at the words, confused. What did she mean? The bank records proved the account had been emptied. Every dollar was gone. Then I read the final line of the letter, and the paper nearly slipped from my hands. Someone withdrew the remaining money 2 days after I disappeared. My heart slammed against my chest, because only 2 people had access to that account. Rachel and me. The letter ended there. No explanation, no signature, nothing. Just one terrifying realization. If Rachel was telling the truth, then someone had access to our account after she vanished. Someone who shouldn't have been able to. And for the first time in 6 years, I began to wonder if Rachel hadn't been the only person hiding secrets. I must have read that final sentence 20 times. Someone withdrew the remaining money 2 days after I disappeared. It didn't make sense. It couldn't make sense. The account had only 2 authorized users. Rachel and me. And I knew for a fact that I hadn't touched that money. For 6 years I had believed there was only one victim in the story, me. Now I wasn't sure anymore. I spent most of that night sitting at my kitchen table, staring at the letter. Around midnight I noticed something I had missed before. At the bottom corner of the last page there was a tiny handwritten note. Just 3 words. Check the locker. My heart skipped a beat. Locker? What locker? Then it hit me. A bus station. Years ago, Rachel and I had rented a storage locker at a downtown bus terminal while moving apartments. We used it for only a few months. I had completely forgotten it existed. The next morning, I drove there, honestly expected to find nothing. After 6 years, whatever had been there should have been long gone. But when I gave the clerk the locker number written in the letter, his expression changed. You Daniel Brooks? My stomach tightened. Yes. He disappeared into a back room and returned with a small metal box. I've been instructed to give this to you if you ever came asking. What do you mean, instructed? The man shrugged. A woman paid for storage years in advance. My pulse quickened. Rachel. It had to be Rachel. I took the box to my car. Inside were 3 items. A flash drive, a photograph, and another letter. The photograph showed a younger Rachel standing beside a man I had never seen before. They looked alike. Same eyes, same smile. Her father. The man she had believed was dead. My hands shook as I opened the second letter. This one was shorter. Daniel, if you're reading this, then you've found the box. The flash drive contains everything I couldn't put into words. Watch it alone. And when you're finished, you'll understand why I had to leave. I immediately drove home. The second I got inside, I plugged the flash drive into my laptop. There were dozens of files, photos, documents, emails, scanned records. I opened them one by one, and the deeper I looked, the more unbelievable the story became. Rachel's father had spent years working as a financial investigator. According to the files, he had uncovered a massive fraud operation involving several powerful people. When he tried to expose it, he became a target. Instead of going public, he disappeared. He spent decades hiding under a different identity. At first, I thought the documents were fake. Then I saw court records, news articles, government filings, everything checked out. Rachel hadn't invented any of it. Her father had been living in hiding all those years. But one question still remained. Why take the money? I finally opened a video file. Rachel appeared on the screen. The moment I saw her face, 6 years of anger, confusion, and heartbreak crashed into me all at once. She looked older, tired. But it was her. For several seconds, she just stared into the camera. Then she spoke. "Hi, Daniel." My chest tightened. I hadn't heard her voice in 6 years. Tears immediately filled my eyes. Not because I missed her. Because hearing her voice made everything real again. "I'm sorry," she said. "I know those words aren't enough, but they're all I have." I sat frozen. Rachel explained that after meeting the stranger, she spent months trying to verify his story. Eventually, she found proof. The threats were real. The people looking for her father were real. And when they realized she was engaged, their attention shifted toward me. According to Rachel, the money wasn't stolen for luxury. It wasn't spent on vacations. It wasn't used to start a new life. It was used to disappear. Fake identities, safe housing, travel, security, everything required to stay hidden. Then she said something that shattered me. "The hardest part wasn't leaving." She paused. "The hardest part was letting you hate me." I looked away from the screen, because part of me still did hate her. 6 years of pain doesn't disappear overnight, she continued. "If I had told you the truth, you would have tried to help me. And if you tried to help me, they would have found you." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Her recorded voice filled the room. Then she reached the part that changed everything. "The money wasn't the only thing that disappeared." I frowned. "What did that mean?" Rachel took a deep breath. 2 days after I left, someone accessed the account. I leaned forward. Finally, an answer. According to Rachel, she had withdrawn most of the money before disappearing. Not all of it. There had been nearly $12,000 remaining. 2 days later, somebody removed every dollar, and Rachel knew exactly who had done it. My heart started racing. She looked directly into the camera. "Your best man, Eric." I nearly fell out of my chair. "Eric?" "No." That was impossible. Eric Lawson had been my best friend since college. The man standing beside me at the wedding. The man who helped me survive Rachel's disappearance. The man who spent years telling me she was a liar. I stared at the screen in disbelief. Rachel continued. "The people watching her had access to information she didn't. While monitoring her movements, they also discovered unusual activity connected to our account. Eventually, they traced it back to Eric. Rachel had included documents proving he had obtained temporary access codes through information he secretly gathered while helping us organize wedding finances. I couldn't breathe. Every memory suddenly felt different. Eric had been there through everything. The canceled wedding, the financial mess, the depression, the recovery. He knew every detail, because he'd helped create the disaster. I sat there for almost an hour after the video ended, unable to think, unable to process. Then my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. I almost ignored it. Almost. Instead, I answered. "Hello?" a woman's voice replied. "Daniel?" My heart stopped. I knew that voice, even after 6 years. Rachel, silence, then a soft laugh. Not a happy laugh. A nervous one. "Yeah." I couldn't speak. For several seconds, neither of us said anything. Finally, I managed one question. "Are you alive?" "I am." The absurdity of the question hit both of us at the same time. But after 6 years, it was the only thing I wanted to know. Rachel explained that the stranger who delivered the letter had contacted her. He told her I'd received everything. She knew I'd eventually call one of the emergency numbers hidden inside the files. Instead, fate had beaten me to it. For the next 2 hours, we talked. Really talked. For the first time in 6 years. Some things were exactly as she'd described. Some things were messier, more complicated, more painful. But one thing became clear. Rachel had never run away with another man. She had never stopped loving me. And she had never expected forgiveness. All she'd wanted was for me to know the truth before it was too late. Near the end of the conversation, I finally asked the question that had haunted me for years. "Why now?" Rachel became quiet. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. "My father passed away 3 months ago." I closed my eyes. "I'm sorry." After he died, there wasn't any reason to keep hiding. The people who spent years chasing him are either gone or in prison now. For the first time, the nightmare was finally over. A few months later, Rachel and I met in person. I wish I could tell you it was like a movie, that we ran into each other's arms and instantly fixed everything. It wasn't. Real life doesn't work that way. Tears, awkward silences, old wounds, difficult conversations, years of pain standing between us. But there was honesty. For the first time in a very long time, there was honesty. We didn't get back together. At least not then. Some scars take longer to heal. Some stories don't get neat endings. But something even more important happened. I finally got the truth. The truth I'd spent 6 years searching for. The truth that allowed me to let go of the anger that had controlled so much of my life. The last time Rachel and I spoke before going our separate ways that day, she said something I'll never forget. Sometimes the people who hurt us the most aren't the people we think they are. For years, I believed Rachel had destroyed my life. But the truth was more complicated than that. And if there's one lesson I learned from everything that happened, it's this. Sometimes the answers we spend years searching for are hidden behind assumptions we've never questioned. Before you let anger become your entire story, make sure you know the whole truth. Because the truth has a way of finding its way back to you. Even 6 years later, in the form of a letter you never expected to receive. If this story kept you hooked until the end, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you never miss another powerful story. And remember, sometimes the truth isn't what we expect. It's what we choose to believe before we have all the facts. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I'll see you in the next story.